this exciting episode, Axel Norstad traverses a terrain so worn it needs no explanation. Who among us hasn't wanted to go from building furniture to founding a children's hospital? Alas, all's fair in love and transfer of trademark deals, plus Osa Masson and Marie Windsor star. Who's the hero? Who's the zero? I bet we'll find out in Perry Mason, Season 5, Episode 18, The Case of the Tarnished Trademark. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose, pretty simple, provide an audio companion to every episode of television's greatest legal drama, Perry Mason. Each episode, we give you a summary of the plot. We even compare plots with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel if the episode was an adaptation. We give you a little trivia, reveal the episode's theme, and revel in a Perry proverb. That's a pearl of wisdom from the man himself. Before we head to the water cooler, where just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of our fave legal cruise adventures. But first, say it with me, to the Law Library! Each episode in the Law Library, we examine a legal conundrum from the episode to find courtroom precedents for future Perry cases. In this visit to the Law Library, we discuss our episode's judge threatening would-be furniture magnate Sam Hadley with perjury.
In view of Mr. Hadley's admission, I'll leave the matter of perjury charges against him up to your office.
So, what does everyone's favorite legal prohibition against lying involve? In California in 1962, and pretty much everywhere else in the country for that matter, perjury charges required a prosecutor to show that the accused took a legal oath before a competent authority, willfully made a false statement about matters that could influence a legal proceeding's outcome, and knew the statements were false at the time and intended to testify falsely. Being convicted of perjury in 1962, Cali carried serious consequences: imprisonment in the state pen for up to 4 years. Watch out, Mr. H. That'll put a serious crimp in your delusions of furniture grandeur. Don't do it! Now, let's get to the full plot of this episode. The Case of the Tarnished Trademark. Danish immigrant Axel Norstad has some momentous news to share with his crew. After 30 years of building a respectable furniture business, he's decided to sell both his shop and its valuable trademark. Tell us why, Axel!
You want to know why I stop you from work and talk to you like this? I think everybody that knows Axel Norstad knows my dream. That someday, here in our little Danish part of the valley, we have our own children's hospital. And now, at last, I find a way to make this dream to be fulfilled.
The sale is orchestrated by elegant Edie Morrow, who brokers a deal with Martin Summers, a Long Beach furniture manufacturer. Tell us what you think of Mr. Summers' unsuccessful bidder for the trademark, Mr. Hadley.
The slide trombone of the furniture business.
Summers secures the agreement with a $50,000 personal check. However, trouble begins brewing almost immediately when Summers starts making changes to business operations. Osa Masson plays Axel's right-hand Friday, Lisa Peterson, and she's got some bad news for Axel.
For first time in 30 years, I let myself sleep as much as I want to, and you had to wake me up.
I know, Axel, but something is wrong.
Lisa, you forget Mr. Summers is boss now. Call him in Long Beach.
No, Axel. He's the one who's making it wrong. This morning, I got a notice from him at the lumberyard. He's canceling the regular monthly order for the shop.
The calls keep coming in. Summers is making a mockery of the trademark.
Ramsey from Chicago. He calls me. He tells me that you sell furniture under my trademark cheaper than I can make it. I want to know, how can you do that?
That's my business, I'm afraid.
No, mine. For 30 years, I worked to build up Trademark. Just because we sign contract does not mean that I do not care what goes on.
Do I have to mention that we have reason to suspect Edie Morrow? She's dismissive of Hadley. She's getting some odd sobriquets from the architect Latham Reed, who landed the Children's Hospital gig and apparently introduced Axel to Morrow in the first place.
Good night, Miss Morrow. Much obliged for everything.
I mean it, darling. You handle everything just perfectly.
Good night, Mr. Reed.
And by the way, she gave the deal to Martin Summers. Come on now. Norstad confronts Martin Summers, and the balsa wood starts flying.
That is my design on top, but not underneath. This is not my chair. This is not a piece of furniture. This is toothpicks. This is trash.
Axel gets Perry on the phone now. He's gonna need him. Why? Summers is dead. There's a $50,000 check that's gone missing, and the drunk and befuddled Latham Reed doesn't have a clue. And oh yeah, Axel admits he fled the scene of the crime after finding the body and getting blood on his trousers. Berger starts building his case. Axel was violent, and a traveling salesman who knew Norstad identifies him fleeing from the crime scene.
Let the record show that the witness pointed to the defendant, Axel Norstad. What was he doing when you saw him?
Well, he was running like a scared rabbit out of the cabin.
How can you be so sure of your identification of a figure you saw running away into the night?
Well, I ought to be able to identify Axel Norstad. I've been selling him a line of paint specialties for years.
Most damaging of all, police find burned clothing in Axel's office stove. Edie Morrow testifies, and she reveals Summers had a manipulative plan to send her and Axel to Copenhagen. Though, shocker, she has genuine feelings for the old guy?
Well, how on earth could I promise to marry a man who's never said one word but furniture to me, who never in any way has told me that he feels as I do?
Mason exposes how the bids for Axel's property were manipulated, with Lisa Peterson, leaking information about competing offers.
I told Carl that I would fix it with Mr. Summers about the bids, yes. Because Axel was so stupid to sell our shop was no reason for everyone to suffer. The big, stupid. It was my shop. My office. Who do you think everyone was looking to for running things? Me. Lisa Peterson.
And when you saw that Malcolm Atterbury was going to be in this episode, you automatically suspected him. I did too. And you were right too. He was getting blackmailed by Summers, so guess what he did? Jacques!
When I tried to get Summers' option in writing, he wanted more money to cover all those checks that he was kiting. Or else he'd block my sale. Block it so I couldn't deliver. Then he wanted more money. Then more. Well, we got into a fight and that's how I made my killing.
In our denouement, wedding bells are in the offing for Axel and Edie. I hope those crazy kids make it.
There is no fool like an old fool.
Such a pity. Oh, that a man like that should have to wait all those years to get married. Don't you agree?
Also, get on that children's hospital, Axel. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is a deep dive on an actor or actress who guest starred in the episode. And finally, a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Axel talks about his Danish community, how he's so proud of it.
Here in our little Danish part of the valley, we have our own children's hospital.
Well, so for this Paul prompt, I asked 2 questions. Does LA have a large Scandinavian immigrant population? Is it Little Denmark in SoCal? And second, who are the most famous Danish furniture makers? Tell us what you find, Pauls. Our Della for this episode could be none other than Osa Masson, aka Lisa Peterson.
I was the entire office force. Stenographer, bookkeeper, everything.
Here's 10 about Osa. Born Asa Madsen, January 13th, 1914, Copenhagen, Denmark. Number 2, began career as a newspaper photographer. Number 3, made her film debut in the 1935 Danish film Kidnapped, directed by Alice O. Fredericks. Number 4, arrived in Hollywood 1938 after being given a screen test by 20th Century Fox. Number 5, became a naturalized citizen of the U.S. in 1941. Number 6, starred memorably as the adulterous wife in the 1941 George Cukor film A Woman's Face, starring Joan Crawford. Also helped out John Wayne with his accent in the film The Long Voyage Home. Fun! Number 7, briefly changed her name to Stephanie Paul for one film, $1 Million Weekend, to avoid confusion with actresses Ona Munson and Alona Massey, not Osa Masson. Number 8, appeared in the 1950 sci-fi thriller Rocket Ship XM, transitioned to television in the 50s and early 60s before concluding her career. She was in shows like Wagon Train and, of course, Perry Mason. You remember her from The Case of the Desperate Daughter and The Case of the Shattered Dream. Number 9, married 3 times, Alan Hersholt, 1938 to 1945. Dr. Harvey Cummins, 1947 to 1951. That was the real heartbreak for her. Cummins wasn't even 45. And finally, Dr. Stanley Vogel, dentist, 1954 to 1962. No kids that I could find in any of the 3 marriages. Number 10, passed away January 2nd, 2006 at the age of 91 in Santa Monica, California. Our Perry for this episode involves our intrepid hero knowing his Danish food. Here's what he asks for Della to do during some downtime.
I thought we'd better get out here, Della. Why don't you go over and order us some æbleskiver?
A beg pardon?
Danish pastry.
That name means literally apple slices in Danish. Modern versions of these delicious dough balls rarely include apples. They're made with the same kind of dough as European pancakes, and I gotta say, they sound delicious. Yum. Hey, Della, while you're at it, can you grab me a few too? Our theme for this episode is trademarks. Axel has a trademark he's built over 30 years. It's not just a business identifier, it's a man's identity. And yet it takes basically 10 minutes of episode time for a 30-year legacy to be exploited and devalued. Ironically, Mason reveals how the trademark sale was merely camouflage for real estate schemes, and that Children's Hospital was the real scandal. Yet, the story ends with the trademark's integrity preserved, and hopefully we'll get that Children's Hospital up soon. Axel's name depends on it. Now, it's time for a Perry proverb. Perry's got to go a couple rounds with Axel in this one, and when Axel won't stop shielding Edie, but backs off from his former position of total deception, Perry throws him this proverbial bone.
Do you believe me, Mr. Mason?
No, but you're getting closer to the truth.
You're getting there, Perry says. And by the end of the episode, Axel's a free man. He's marrying Edie. He's heading back to the homeland. Good times. May we all not just get closer to the truth, but actually find it and live it out. Now it's time for a swig from the water cooler.
There is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Every time we visit the water cooler, we give you a deleted scene. A bit that didn't quite make the episode's final cut. Longtime listener Tim Cree wrote in with the one and only deleted scene we needed for this episode. Quote, here's a deleted scene for the case of the ersatz emblem. I mean, the case of the slandered symbol. No, it's the case of the belittled badge. Anyway, the deleted scene is Paul Drake testing chair after chair in the Summers manufacturing plant after the switch. And time again, the chair collapses under his weight into a pile of kindling. Holy IKEA, Perry! Close quote. Thanks, Tim. The Paul prompt from the case of the captain's coins involved 1. Malay States trade policy, and 2. Coin collectors' newsletters. Dad Drake and Aunt Mai P.I. were on the case. Let's start with coin collecting publications. He told us that the coin collecting publications of record were The Numismatist, Coin World, and the Red Book, and that the Malay trade agreements from the 1870s were influenced by Britain and the Netherlands, that privileges for the 1870s included exclusive rights regarding certain commodities, control over ports and warehouses, tax breaks, and protection from corrupt local authorities. Aunt Mai added this bit of history. Okay, so in 1839, a British explorer named James Brooke arrived in Borneo. Now, Borneo is a Malay state. It's now East Malaysia. And Brooke met with the Sultan of Brunei. The Sultan tasked Brooke with suppressing piracy and quelling rebellions in the region, particularly Sarawak, which was then under Brunei's control. Sarawak was another Malay state. Brooke did what he was asked to do, and his actions laid the foundation for the Brooke dynasty known as the White Rajas, who ruled Sarawak for 100 years until 1946. Brooke helped form Sarawak from a territory of Brunei into an independent state that was recognized by the US in 1850, the UK in 1864. And I gotta wonder if that's who the script writers were thinking of with their Captain's Coins plot. Absolutely wild. Thanks, you two. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Do you have a comment on the episode or the pod in general? Why don't you drop me a line at theperrypod@gmail.com. Next time, we've got amnesia, accusations, dark deeds in the park, as troubled heiress Eleanor Corbin suffers from apparent memory loss, but maybe hiding deeper secrets. It's an honest-to-goodness adapted from a novel episode, folks. Don't miss it. The Case of the Glamorous Ghost. Join us, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat!